Now let me just spend a couple of minutes talking to you about how people go about justifying their various positions, and typically the kinds of things that we come across in and we talk about in philosophy. We hear people talking about the reason they are theists, they think God exists, has to do with religious experience. Now sometimes it's their personal experience, sometimes it's it's based on sort of historical experience. That is, the Bible told them so, and why is the Bible true? Somebody told them, and there's a whole tradition of how this information has been passed on. Not much different than our stories about George Washington or any matter of history. People cite that as reasons, and we're going to look at and some of the philosophers that we're talking about really look at it from that perspective and discuss it and discuss issues about having miracles. There's something called the cosmological argument, which has been defended by, or at least analyzed and defended by some or many philosophers, and it really proceeds from the idea that God, should say, caused the universe to exist. That is, God is the cause of the universe. You need some supernatural being to actually cause the universe to exist. And then there's an argument that some philosophers have given, some people have given, which is known as the argument from design, or sometimes the teleological argument. Teleological comes from a Greek word meaning goal. The word telos, T-E-L-O-S, is the goal. So the idea is that the universe, the earth, the world was created for a specific purpose. And it was God that designed the universe, and He has a mission for us. He has some reason for us, for our existence. Now, we're going to examine another argument the next argument we're going to examine at least is something called the ontological argument. Remember we talked about an ontological problem, ontology, metaphysics, ontology, almost synonymous. We'll learn a little bit more about that word later on. But this has to do with the nature of reality. This argument proceeds from the fact that there has to be a greatest being in the universe, and since there has to be a greatest being, it's got to be God. Very few people cite this as an example, as a reason for their thinking that God exists, other than theologians. But what's kind of interesting about this one is this sort of works like a proof in geometry. It's not that anybody cites any evidence for thinking that this, rather it just works like mathematics. And finally, there's something known as Pascal's wager, named after the philosopher Pascal, and we'll talk about that in the next segment of the course, when we get the overview of the modern philosophers. And Pascal was also known for his contributions in mathematics and in probability. And what he thought was that believing in God is the best. That is, theism is like making a bet on whether God exists. And he thinks that he can give reasons for thinking that God exists is the best bet. So there are a whole series of arguments we're going to take a look at, we're going to examine, and we're going to see where our cast of characters are going to end up on it. But that's also helping you get an idea of what kinds of questions we talk about in philosophy. Now that's on the side of theism. Next we're going to turn to on the atheist side.